All right, we're going to go into the last part of our multiplication division of rational numbers unit. And you should have a test next week, guys. But let's go into the application problems. So we learned how to multiply and divide with integers, that's positive and negative numbers. We learned how to multiply and divide with decimals. And we learned how to multiply and divide with fractions. So let's get started on the application. All right, we're going to skip number 1 and go to number 2. It says a swimming pool has 650 gallons of water in it, and it's leaking. And I'm going to go ahead and put down our key pieces. I know it's 650 gallons of water. It's leaking. The change in the amount of water in the pool is negative 12 gallons per hour. So let's talk about negative 12 for a second. So we know we start off, and I'm just going to put key pieces over here. Okay. And then it's leaking at a rate. And that negative 12 gallons just means it's leaking 12 gallons per hour, guys. Just right now, my key pieces over here. How many gallons of water will the pool have after 8 hours, okay? So, first of all, I know it's going to leak this amount 8 times. So, I know I'm going to have to do negative 12 or 8 groups of negative 12. 8 times negative 12, because this is just, per means just for 1 hour. But it's leaking for 8 hours. So, I know that's going to be 8 groups of negative 12. In other words, that it's going to leak 12 gallons every hour for 8 hours. So that's going to leak 12 gallons 8 times. All right. So now it says, how many gallons of water will the pool contain after 8 hours? Well, I'm going to write an expression. It tells me to show my work. I want you all to learn how to write expressions. So I'm going to go off of where it started. It starts at 650 gallons. But then it's leaking, okay? Okay, what is it leaking? It's leaking 12 gallons every hour, but it's going to do that. It's going to do that 8 times. Now, some of you are just going to go ahead and say, well, I'm going to multiply 8 times negative 12 or 12 times 8 and get 96 and subtract the 96. That's fine. But I'm just going to go ahead and say that here I start off with 650 gallons. Plus, it's going to leak 96 gallons. So I'm going to have to take away 96 gallons. Because if it leaks 12 gallons 8 times, it's going to leak 96 gallons total. And all I do is subtract the two. 650 minus 96. That's one way of doing it, guys. Some of you are just going to take the more common sense approach. So after 8 hours, the pool will have 554 gallons of water. Just going to write it in a complete sentence form. Okay, that's one way of doing it. Another way, I'm going to erase this, guys. Some of you just going to say, well, first of all, I'm going to figure out how much leaked and all. So some of you are just going to say 12 times 8, which is 96 leaked out. But I like for you to use the numbers that they have. So I'm going to put negative 96. And then we have 650 plus a negative 96, which will still give me 554, okay? All right, 3 says Mrs. Cran has $300 deducted from her checking account every month for her car payment. So $300 deducted means that, let me write this down, $300 deduction means $300 is taken out every month. Okay, so that's for the car payment. She also has $150 deducted every month for insurance. So we got another $150 deducted. So that means that an extra $150 is taken out. And that's each month too. And that's for the insurance. So after a year, well, this is each month and this is each month. So it's after a year. About how much do these payments change your checking account balance? Well, I got months and this is after a year. So in other words, after a year, which is the same as, it means after 12 months, guys. Because these are taken out by the month. So I'm going to have to do my calculations in terms of months, okay? I can't worry about a year. A year is the same as 12 months. So basically, this is going to be deducted 12 times, and this is going to be deducted 12 times because that's going to make the whole year. How much did the payments change her checking account? Because they are deductions, I'm going to look at my total deduction. How much is total deduction per month? All right, because they are deductions, I'm going to write them as negative. So negative 300 plus negative 150. That I'm going to add those. So my total deduction is represented by negative 450. Negative because it is a deduction, okay? Don't put 450, put negative 450. A deduction will be considered as negative, guys. So negative 450 is coming out every month. So it wants to know after a year how much they changed the balance. So negative 450 is coming out every month. So now all I got to do is multiply that negative 450 times 12 to see how much it changes her checking account by. So I'm just going to do 450 times 12 is 0. 5 times 2 is 10. 4 times 2 is 8 plus the 1 is 9. Put my placeholder. 1 times 0 is 0. 1 times 5 is 5. And that's 4. Wow. Basically, she has a total of $5,400 taken out for the whole year. But make it negative now because it says by how much do these payments change your account. If I wrote it in words, I would put they change your account by a decrease. I would use the word decrease or use the word deduction of $5,400 per year. But because I'm not using words like decrease or deduction, I have to use the sign to indicate that it's negative or that it's a decrease or deduction. Okay? Use the negative sign to indicate a decrease or a deduction in the account. Okay? But if I use the word decrease or deduction, I can just stick with 5,400. But because I'm not using words, we're focused more on the signs in this lesson. Use the signs for me, okay? Use the signs for me. That's why on this one, I put negative 12. I know it's leaking out 12 gallons per hour, but I'm going to say negative 12 times 8, which gives me negative 96. Now, I know it leaked 96 gallons, but if I don't use the word leaked, I got to use the negative, guys. Okay, let's take a look at 4. 4 says a scuba diver descends 90 feet in 6 minutes. Okay, descends means it's negative, guys. But instead of using words, we're going to use signs. So as a number, I'm going to write negative 90, okay? So again, instead of using words, we're going to use signs. We're not using the words. We're using signs for the words, all right? What is the diver's average change in position per minute to where she started, okay? So she descended 90 feet in 6 minutes. I just want to know what she descends per minute. Okay, so I don't need, if she can go down 90 feet in 6 minutes, I just need to know how much she can go down in 1 minute. So I know I need less. Okay? So the negative 90 is the total descent. I don't need the total descent. I just need the descent in 1 minute. So if you're going from the total to a smaller part, I need you to divide, guys. If you're going from the total to a smaller part, we're going from the total descent to just the descent in 1 minute. That's a total to a smaller part. Then make sure you divide. Okay? Also, the word average should help you to see that you're going to divide. So I'm going to take negative 90 and divide it by 6. Or I could have written it like this, guys. And figure out how many 6's are in 90. It's going to be 15. But it's negative. Okay? This is my new, it says please write a numerical expression. This is my expression, guys. And this is my solution or my answer. Now, I'm going to ask you to think about why I use negative on the 15. Because somebody's going to say, well, she descended 15 feet per minute. She did. She went down 15 feet every minute. But the word descended will indicate that it's negative. But if you just write a number and you don't use the word descended, you have to put a negative for the word descended. Now, if you write it all out in words, you could just put descended 15 feet. But if you just write a number, again, put the negative for the word descendant. Okay? Five says the low temperatures in Fahrenheit in March City during a week in January were -1 degrees. Then I had plus -9 degrees, and these are supposed to be degrees, plus 3 degrees, plus -5 degrees, plus 7 degrees, plus -4 degrees, plus 8 degrees, plus -7 degrees, okay? All right, so those were the temperatures. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It should have 7. It says during a week in March. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, we're going to say during a week and a day in March. Okay? It says find the average low temperature. Well, we're going to, because we have multiple numbers, to find the average, we're going to treat it like it's like you got multiple grades. We're going to find your average. Well, when you have multiple numbers to find the average, all you do is just add the numbers and then divide by the total number of numbers you have. That's all you do. So if I want to find the average, we all know average means divide. But for multiple numbers, you got to add first. Okay? Normally, to find an average, you take the one number and you divide. But you add, so you're going to find the sum of the numbers. So it's going to be the sum divided by the total amount. Okay? By the total amount of numbers. So let's find the sum. So I'm going to take all these. That's to the left, that's to the left, that's to the right, that's to the left, that's to the right, that's to the left, that's to the right, and that's to the left. So I'm going to take all my lefts and add them together. So I got 1 to the left. I'm just going to do it this way, guys. -1 and -9 makes -10 because you add and just keep the sign. -10 and -5 makes -15. -15 plus -4 makes -19. And then I got to add -7. Well, -19 plus -7 makes -26. So my sum is -26. And I just divided by the total number of numbers I have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh, wait a minute. I'm not finished. I just found those that went to the left. Sorry. Okay, that was my total left. Now I need to do the total right. Okay. That would be 3 plus 7 plus 8, which is 18 to the right. So I'm going to take, I got 26 to the left and 18 to the right. I'm working on the sum. Okay. That's going to be -8 because you're going to have to subtract 26 and 18. And there's more to the left. And divide it by the total. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 again. So the average daily temp is represented by -1 degrees. It's in terms of Fahrenheit, guys. That's a little bunched up. So let me write that a little better. So I hope you all understand where I got that -1, that -8 from to start off with. So all I did again to find the -8 is I just added the numbers. Okay? So I took -1 and -9 and -5 and -4 and -7, and I added them. When I added all those, because all these were the ones that went to the left, I got -26. And then I took 3 and 7, which makes 10, and added it to 8, which makes 18. And that's how I got this, 18 to the right. But now, in order to get the sum, you need to take these two, the 26, -26, and 18, and subtract because they're going in different directions. Remember, same group add, or same direction add, different direction subtract. Well, 26 minus 18 is 8, and it's more to the left. So that's why I got the -8 on the top. And I divided by 8. Well, that 8 that I divided by, which is this 8 here, is the total number of numbers I have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that gives me my average, which is -1 degrees. All right, 6 says Myra withdraws the same amount of money from her checking account each week. Okay, she's consistent. In 6 weeks, she withdraws a total of $240. Okay. Write a numerical expression to represent the amount of money her checking account, my account changes by each week. Okay, then solve. Okay, now be very careful. Let's just take a look at what we have. Withdrawing money is not a good thing. And if you don't use the word withdraw, you got to use a negative, okay? So I know she withdraws a total of $240. So because I have the word withdraw there, 240 can remain 240. But if I take the word withdraw off, I substitute the word withdraw with a sign, a negative sign. Remember, if you're not going to use the word, you got to use the sign, okay? So I know the total withdrawn, if I'm not going to use the word, I'm going to use the sign, had to be -240. Okay, if I just look at it in terms of a number. But that's what she did in 6 weeks. So that again is a total, like overall. Now it says write a numerical expression to represent the money in her checking account changes by each week. So I want to go from in 6 weeks to each week. In 6 weeks was my total change. And each week will just represent like a small change from week to week. Okay? So here we go again. Now I have the total and I want to go to something smaller. So what did I tell you to do if you have the total and you want to go to something smaller? Well, you are to divide. So I'm going to take my -240 and I'm going to use negative in place of the word withdraw and divide it by 6. So that amount of money divided by 6 weeks is going to give me the money per week, okay? So that's going to be a change of $40 for every 1 week, okay? Or you could just say, you don't have to write it like that. You could do it this way. You could just say 6 into 240. Bring down the 0. 6 goes into 0 0 times. Will be a change of $40 per week, okay? Now, if you write it in words, you don't have to put the negative. But if you write it as a number, and this is going to be your expression, guys. You could have also written that expression like this. Okay. But now, if you write it in words, you can just put her, and you got to use a word to indicate the negative. Her account, and don't say changes by, because changes could be positive or it could be negative. So I got to use a word that indicates that it's negative. So I can say our account decreases by $40 each week. You wouldn't say her account decreases by negative $40 because the word decrease indicates that it goes down. You only use negative or use a sign if that word is missing. For instance, I only use negative on the 40 if I don't use the word decrease, but I don't use both at the same time. Okay? I either use the sign or I either use the word to indicate it, but not both at the same time. Okay, let's look at 7. It says, Mr. Harris spent $40 at the concession stand during the game. He spent $8 each time. Write a numerical expression to represent the number of trips Mr. Harris made to the concession stand. And every year I get this problem and somebody tells me that Mr. Harris made -5 trips. I don't know why I get that. A person can't make negative trips, guys. Okay, so I know this is what he spent during the entire game, guys. So this is going to represent his total spent. Now, if I don't use the word spent, I got to use a negative sign. Remember, we don't use both. And because we're writing an expression, we want to use just numbers. We don't want to use words. So his total spent will be represented by -40. And then it says he spent $8 each time he went. So I know on each trip, I can represent it with a -8, okay? Because of the word spent. Again, if you're going to use spent, you don't use a negative. But if we just want to put a number, make it negative. Because we're not going to use the word spent if we just put a number, okay? So I got to have some type of connotation on that number. I need to know whether it's positive or whether it's negative if I don't have a word. So I know whether he got the money or he spent the money. Okay? It says, write a numerical expression to represent the number of trips he made. Well, I have his total spent. And I have what he spent each trip. But because I start off with the total, guys, and I go to a smaller amount, which is what he spent each trip, it's always going to work the same. Always the same when you're given the total. You just divide. So I'm going to take -40 and divide it by -8. Or you can write it like this. And it says, write the expression. This is the expression, guys. I know that he, -40 divided by -8 is positive, and it's 5 trips, guys. He made 5 trips. On each trip, he spent $8. So he spent a total of $40. But to represent in terms of numbers, it's -8 and -40 if I don't use the word spent, okay? Again, don't use a word that indicates that it's negative and the negative sign. That wouldn't make any sense. All right. Let's take a look at 8. Aiden likes to dive on vacation. He stops to take a picture every 7 feet he dives. How has this elevation changed relative to the surface of the water after 3 pictures? Okay, so basically, if I don't use the word dives, I already know that this is 7 feet is going down. So if I represent it as a number, I'm going to have to put negative 7 feet. If I use the word dives, I don't have to put the negative. We don't use the negative and a word that indicates that a number is negative, okay? All right, but how many times does he says he stops to take a picture every 7 feet? Ooh, okay. All right, so he's taking 3 pictures. So he's going to stop 3 times. Here you just multiply. He's going to stop 3 times. So I get negative 21 feet. It's going to be his new elevation. Now, some of you may have done this, guys. Someone said, well, he stopped at 7 feet to take the first picture. Plus, he went down another 7 to take the second picture. Then he went down another 7 to take the third picture, which makes negative 21. You can do it that way. I don't care. But I'd rather just say he stopped. He went down 7 feet 3 times because he took 3 pictures. Keyword 3 times. Times. He did that 3 times, guys. All right. Let's see. I think we can finish these. I had planned to have some of these for Monday. Let me see how many on here. 17. I don't know if I want to do all of them today. Let's try. All right. I know some of y'all are saying, oh my God, why didn't she just wait? Sorry, guys. All right, so let's take a look. Part 2 is more with rational numbers. When I say rational numbers are all of the numbers except those crazy looking numbers we'll talk about next year. But mine that I really want to focus on, I want to focus on fractions and decimals in this one, okay? It says a deep sea diver changes his position relative to the surface of the water by negative 7/2 meters every minute. In other words, if I don't use the word with the negative sign, what's a word I could use to indicate negative 7/2 meters per minute? Okay, it's got to be a word. And so if I don't use a negative, I could also say he descends 7.5 meters per minute. Or I could say goes down. But you can see in this sentence, none of those words are used. So we have to use a negative sign to indicate that it's going down, okay? Remember, you don't use the word and the sign. You just either use the word or the sign. Negative 7/2, to make this make sense, guys, is negative 3.1 meters per minute. If that makes more sense for some of you, okay? It says, write an expression to show his position after 3 minutes if he starts at the surface. Well, this is what he does per minute. So they gave me his per minute first. And I want to go to the total. Well, his total that they're asking for is after 3 minutes. That's going to be the total that we want to find. So instead of being given the total first, this time I was given like the smaller amount first. Because I know after 3 minutes, he will have gone a larger distance. If this is just per minute, after 3 minutes, I know my answer should be larger. So basically, they gave me the smaller amount first, and I want to go to the larger amount, that's going to be an indication that I multiply. So I'm going to take negative 7/2. I'm going to multiply it by 3 because this is per minute. Some of you are going to do this negative 7/2 plus negative 7/2 plus negative 7/2. I just prefer to do times 3. So that's going to give me negative 21/2. I'm going to make this look better because I don't like negative 21/2. I can do this negative 21/2 meters after 3 minutes, but I prefer for it to be in terms of a mixed number. It's negative 10.5 meters after 3 minutes. I like mine better in the mixed number form. But here, if you add these up, you're still going to get negative 21/2, which is still negative 10.5 meters. Okay? I don't care which one. You can do it this way or you can do it this way. It doesn't matter to me. But again, like I want to make sure you all understand, if you have a hard time deciding whether you multiply or divide, if you are given the total amount of something and you're asked to go to a smaller amount, that's division. If you're given a smaller amount first and you're asked to increase it or go to a total, you have to multiply to increase something. You divide to make things smaller, okay? So write that down. Maybe that'll help. All right, 10, the position of a submersible water vehicle relative to sea level changes by negative 5 miles each hour. Now, think again. Why did they use negative on this one? Negative 5/10 miles, I'm sorry. Why is there a negative? Because there's no word to indicate whether it's going up or down. So since there's no word, you use a sign to decide whether it goes up or down. So when it says it changes by negative 5/10 miles each hour, that means it goes down 5/10 miles per hour. Some people are going to use mph for miles per hour. But because we don't see the word down, we just put the negative on that 5/10, okay? After how many hours will the vehicle's position have changed by negative 2.5 miles? Okay, so I want to know how long it's going to take it to go negative 2.5 miles, okay? Write an expression. All right, so somewhere in here, I do have what it goes. This is miles per hour, and this is the total miles changed by. The total miles is changed, okay? Guys, it's not asking you for either part. It's not asking you for the smaller part, nor is it asking you for the larger part. It already gave you the larger part, so why would it ask you for it? It already gave you the smaller part, so why would it ask you for it, okay? So you're not asked for a smaller or a larger part. You have both. When you have both, you're normally going to take the total. You might want to write this down when given both larger of the total and the part which is a smaller amount. Divide like so. You're going to take the total and divide it by the smaller part, okay? You're going to take the total and divide it by the smaller part. And that would have worked. I'm going to go back up here, guys. I'll finish this and I'll go back and find another one, because here I was given both. I was given the total, and then I was given the miles per hour, okay? Just a small amount of miles for each hour, and I was given the total. So I was given this small amount of miles, and I was given the total amount of miles. So that was both the larger and the smaller part. So you just take your total, and you divide it by your part, guys. Or you can write it like this. And I'm going to do top in, bottom out. I can't divide by a decimal, so I slide this over once, and I slide that over once. So basically, I'm looking at 5 into 25, which is just 5. So it took 5 hours, okay, for it to go from that negative 5 miles to 2.5 miles down, relative to sea level. Let me show you where else you had both the total and the part, and I should explain it like that up here. Number 7. Okay, we weren't going to a smaller amount. I need to fix this, because it was a better way for me to explain it. That was not the best way. I was given the total spent and fix this on your paper. I was given the total spent, and I was given the smaller amount spent each trip. So when you're given both, take the total and divide it by the part, okay? That'd be the part each trip. So there's your total, there's your part each trip. It tells you how many trips. So go back and fix number 7 like that, all right? Pause the video and fix it if you need to. Okay, let's go on down. Let's look at 11. All right, it says Mariella's bank statement shows a decrease of $250 every week. Okay, there's the word decrease. So notice that $250 is positive because of the word decrease. But if I take the word decrease out, guys, you've got to use, negative $250, okay? Remember, don't use the word and the sign. And that's every week. How many weeks will it take the amount deducted to total negative $20? I already know I got an amount that's coming out per week. Okay. And that's the small amount. And this is weekly. And it also gave me the total, which was negative 20. So here I'm also given both. So take your total and divide it by the part that's coming out weekly. So the total is 20 and the part that's coming out weekly is negative 250. I am going to write negative 20 divided by negative 2.5. You can drop that 0. All right, this goes in and this goes out. All right, so again, we do not divide by a decimal. So I'm going to slide this over once. If you don't see a decimal here, add a 0 and slide it once. The decimal comes up. So I'm looking at 25 into 200, which is 8. So it says how many weeks. I can clearly put 8 weeks. Guys, weeks should never be negative. If you get a negative answer, you should know you've done something wrong for weeks. Like time can never be negative either. Or trips can never be negative. Okay, you can't do that. Time, like this one, it says in how many hours. You should know you would never end up with a negative amount of hours. Okay. That's a good 12. It says Sam pays $30 each month for his gym membership. Okay, and if you don't use the word pays, it's not a good thing, guys. It's money that's coming out of Sam's pocket. What is the change in the amount of money in his account after 2/3 of a year? So this one is a tad bit different. So if I don't use the word pays, I got to stick with -30. It's just money that's coming out of his pocket. Now, if somebody is paying him, that's good. But he's paying, so make it a negative. All right, so I know it's $30 coming out each month. Sorry about that. Now, had it said 2 months, I could automatically say, instead of 2/3 of a year, had it said something like 2 months, I could say that would be -60. Or had it said 3 months, I could have just done 3 times -30 and gotten -90, okay? 4 months, I could have done 4 times -30 and said would have changed it by -$120. In other words, $120 would have been deducted from his account. But it doesn't even say months. It says a year, and it doesn't say a whole year. It says 2/3 of a year. Had it said a year, I could have used 12 months. Okay, but it doesn't even say a year. It says 2/3 of a year. So, Miss Blue, what do I do about that if it says 2/3 of a year? I don't know how many months that is. Okay. Okay, so the question is, how many months are in 2/3 of a year? I mean, why couldn't this be a nice problem that had like 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, something like that? All right, how many months are in 2/3 of a year? That's the question. So I'm going to do something. This is drastic, guys. I'm going to list the months. And I'm going to split them into thirds. And I'm going to pick 2 groups of them. And you're going to tell me how many months are in 2/3 of a year. And then we're going to talk about mathematically how do we find that, okay? So first of all, we have January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. So I'm going to take 12 things and split them into thirds. Okay. So I got 12 things. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Split them into thirds or into threes. Okay. Like not threes, but like split the 12. If I take 12 things and split it into threes, how many things will be in each group? 12 things split into threes. There'll be 4 things in each group. Okay. So that's a third. And I got 4 more things. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's a third. And let's do red. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is a third. So I got 12 things split into thirds. So it's going to be 4 months is a third. But I'm not looking for a third. I'm looking for 2 of those thirds. So if I were just looking for a third, I would just have that little group. But since I'm looking for 2 of those thirds, I'm going to have this group as well. So how many months are in there? Let's just count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that would be 8 months. Now the question is, how do I figure out it's 8 months without drawing the months out and splitting 12 months into thirds? Not thirds, but seeing how many times 3 will go into 12. That is thirds because it's 4 in each one. Splitting 12 months into thirds and then picking 2 of those thirds to see it's 8. So without going through all that, what in the world do I do? So let's take a look and see. 2/3 of a year. Let me undo that because I didn't mean to do it. That's the key thing. So I want you all to know something, guys. When you see the word of, if you're asked to find a fraction of, and let me write this. When you see the word of in between a number and something else that represents another number, that means multiply, guys. So here's the number 2/3. And then in a year, there are 12 months. And there's the word of in between them. That means multiply. All right, so when you make this little note to find a fraction of another number, it's also works the same for percent, but we'll talk about that later. To find a fraction of another number, percent of means multiply too. But fraction of, to find a fraction of another number, just multiply the fraction by the number. That's all you do. So mathematically, instead of doing all that highlighting and grouping them up, so I'm going to say the math part is just to do 2/3 times, and it says 2/3 of a year. Well, how many months are in a year since I'm trying to get to months? So I'm going to have to change a year to 12 months. I used to use the number 12 for a year. So 2/3 times 12, but put it over 1. Put your whole numbers over 1. That's going to give you 24/3, which is just 8. And again, this is 12 months. So 2/3 of 12 is 8 months. That's the math part, okay? So now I know, go back up here. Instead of having 2/3 of a year, I can cross that out and just say after 8 months. So Sam, if I go all the way back, I'm going to have to erase some of this stuff. So Sam pays $30 each month for his gym membership. Says, what is the change in the amount of money in his account? Now read it as after 8 months and write the expression first. Okay? So this negative 30 is going to come out 8 times. Why am I using a negative on a 30? Because Sam is paying it out of his pocket. It's a loss of money. Because I'm not using the word pay, I must use a sign to indicate that that pay is negative. Okay? So that's going to give me negative $240. This is the expression that I need you to write. And this is the solution. That's how much the change in his account is going to be. In other words, if I didn't use the word negative, if I didn't use the sign negative on this, I would have to say it decreases his account by $240 a year, in 2/3 of a year. Okay? But because I'm using the word negative, the sign negative, I don't have to use the word decrease. Remember, don't use both a word and a sign. And I prefer for you just to use the sign, okay? All right, so we're going to take this and make use of it on the next problem, all right? 13. Trayvon, Leah, and Beth are playing a computer game. Trayvon scored 8, and it should say 8 points, guys. Scored negative 8 points. Sorry about that. Beth's score was 3/4 of Trayvon's score. There we go. There's a fraction of another number, just like we talked about up here. A fraction of another number. Just multiply the fraction in the number. You should be able to see what to do. And Leah's score was 1/4 of Beth's score. Okay, that's a fraction of some other score. What was Leah's score? Says you must first find Beth's score, because Beth's score is obviously based off of, Leah's score is obviously based off of Beth's score, okay? So I'm going to do this thing in pieces. It's going to find Beth's scores first, because it says, when I highlight, it's asking me what was Leah's score, but Leah's score was 1/4 of Beth's score, so I need Beth's scores first, okay? So I need to go back and find Beth's score. Well, what was Beth's score? Beth's score was 3/4 of Trayvon's score. What was Trayvon's score? Well, Trayvon's score was -8. So at least I got 2 numbers there. So Beth's score was 3/4 of Trayvon's score, which was -8. So basically just 3/4 times -8. Put a whole number over 1. It's actually an integer, guys, and a whole number. Whole numbers aren't negative. Okay, now you get -24 over 4. Which is -6. So I know Beth's score is equal to -6 points. Okay. So now it's easy to find Leah's score. Well, Leah's score was 1/4 of Beth's score. And I just found Beth's score. Beth's score was -6. So now I'm just going to do 1/4 times -6, put it over 1. That gives me -6/4. And I'm going to do top in, bottom out, T-bow. I can get one group of 4 out of 6. So that gives me -1 and 2 over 4. But I can divide both of these by 2. So that's -1 and 1/2 points. Now some of you are going to do this. Some of you are going to add a decimal and a 0. I don't care. That would be 1.5. So some of you are going to put -1.5. That's fine with me, okay? All right, we're almost done, guys. Bear with me. All right, a clogged bathtub drains at a constant rate, which means the same amount of water is going out per whatever. Excuse me. The amount of water in the bathtub changes by -3/5 gallons in 1 hour. So every hour, like 3 7/500ths of a gallon is coming out. Okay. So I didn't say -3 7/500ths because I said 3 7/500ths is coming out. Because I said it's coming out, I don't use the word negative. But if I say negative, the bathtub changes by -3.75 gallons in 1 hour, I cannot say comes out. I can't use negative and say come out at the same time. All right. What is the change in the amount of water in the bathtub after a third of an hour? Woo, here we go again. All right, so this is not one. I thought it was one we have to convert. We don't have to convert, guys, because this is in terms of hours and this is in terms of hours. Hold on. I'm making a video. So I'm going to call you right back, okay? Hey. Hold on, let me get you on speaker. Hello? Yeah. Hold on. I just walked in here. How you feeling, baby? I'm talking about what about your throat and stomach? It was the same thing I had on this morning. I was working. Yeah, you gonna be working. Little things, baby. Shh, shh. I'm getting your work. Okay. All right. You go finish my video. I'm gonna call you back. Okay? I'm gonna call you back and we're gonna talk about watching. Okay? All right, guys. I'm sorry. Let's go ahead and pick up with that problem. I had to step away for just a minute. All right, so it says, what is the change in the amount of water in the bathtub after a third of an hour? So this is in terms of hours, and that's in terms of hours. Okay, so I just need, in an hour, I know in an hour, in 1 hour, this amount comes out. So I just need a third of that. So I need a third of this amount, okay? That's all I need. And that's going to tell me how many gallons come out in a third of an hour. Because you don't need I don't need all of this, okay? I don't need all of it because all of it, that's what all comes out in an hour. I need a third of an hour, which is a whole lot less. And to find a fraction of something, again, we're going to seek to multiply. 1/3 times negative 3.75. And I'm going to multiply the top. That gives me negative 3.75 divided by 3. I'm going to do top in and bottom out. Bring your decimal up. 3 goes into 3 once. So sorry, guys. 3 goes into 3 once. Bring down to 0. 3 goes into 7 2 times. And 3 goes into 15 5 times. And pick the sign. You got a negative divided by a positive. So my answer is negative 1 2500 gallons in 1/3 of an hour, okay? Now, if you don't want to use a negative, which I would prefer you use the number, okay, with the sign, you could put it in terms of words. In terms of words, then I would say 1 2500 gallons of water drain. The word drain will indicate that it comes out from the tub in 1/3 hour. But you would not use the word drain and the negative symbol or sign at the same time, guys. If you use the word that the water drains from the tub, there's no need to put the negative. But if you don't put those words, you need to put the negative. And I would prefer you write it like this in numerical form, okay? Not in word form. Okay. So let's take a look at 15. Paula cut ribbon from a spool for a craft project. Okay, so you have those spools of ribbon, little circular things. Each piece of ribbon changed the length of the ribbon remaining on the spool by negative 1 2/10 feet. So every time they cut ribbon, they cut 1 2/10 feet off. Notice I didn't say cut negative 1 2/10 because cut means take away and negative means take away too. So I don't want to say, I don't want to say it twice. It's kind of redundant. Okay. All right, and then it says, when Paula finished the length of the ribbon on the spool, when Paula finished, the length of the ribbon on the spool had changed by negative 9 3/5 feet, which means when she finished, that tells us that this was our total amount of ribbon removed. Because that's when she finished, okay? So when she finished, she had removed that amount total. How many pieces of ribbon did Paula cut? Okay, so let's take a look. I have negative 9 3/5 feet. That's the total removed. And then I have each little piece, like what they're removing every time. So I know that they're removing this. These are my smaller cuts, okay? So this is the smaller amount removed each time. But now I've been given my total and my total amount cut and the smaller amounts that were cut. So when you're giving the total and the smaller, it means you're giving both. I don't know what I'm spelling. Then you need to divide. Take your total and divide it by the smaller cuts. So I'm going to take negative 9 3/5. That's my total. And divide it by the smaller cuts. I got a fraction and a decimal. So I could change negative 9 3/5 to a decimal, or I could change negative 1 2/10 to a fraction. I think I'm just going to change this to a fraction, guys. But you can do what you want to. So negative 1 2/10 is, I know this ends in the tenths place. So when I write this, it's going to be negative 1 2/10. But I can also simplify this. I can divide them both by 2. So that's going to be negative 9 3/5 divided by negative 1 1/5. So I'm going to go with this. That's not my answer. I'm just going to go with that. So let's write this up here. And to divide fractions of mixed numbers, you got to get rid of the mixed numbers first. So 5 times 9 is 45. Plus 3 is 48. So that gives us negative 48/5 divided by 5 times 1, which is 5, plus 1 is 6, negative 6/5. And I'm going to keep change and flip. So I got negative 48/5. Change that. And let's see what we got. I flipped that. Okay, so we're going to have 48 times 5. 48 times 5. Okay, I'm doing this in my head. 240. 230. Okay, I have brain freeze right now. 240. Okay, 240. And it's positive divided by 30. I'm going to cancel out those zeros. 24 divided by 3 is 8. So I know that's 8 pieces of ribbon. So after 8 pieces of ribbon, says how many pieces of ribbon did she cut? Well, she had to cut 8. Now somebody's going to say, I don't like doing the fraction method. Fine, don't do the fraction method. I'm going to show you the other option, okay? But I got to erase this, guys. So let's see. Let's take the original problem, the total, divided by the smaller pieces. Let's change this to a decimal. See, somebody might want to do it that way. So it's going to be negative 9 point something. Just going to figure out what 3/5 is. I'm going to T-bar 3/5. Add a decimal and a 0. If you're going to change it to a decimal, that's what you got to do. 5 won't go into 3, but 5 will go into, hold on. 5 will go into 36 times. And whatever is behind the decimal here goes behind the decimal here. So I can just rewrite this as negative 9.6 divided by negative 1.2. And this can go in and this can go out. Slide the decimal once, slide the decimal once. So I'm looking at 12 and a 96. This is much easier. That's a group of 8. So I can get my 8 ribbons that way. Well, that was easier to do the decimal. Totally up to you, okay? I don't care which one you change. Just change one. Okay. Let's look at 16. The elevation of a small submarine changes by negative 3/8 miles after each exploration. So they're exploring something. And after negative 3/8 miles, they stop. So why do they use the sign negative? The sign is negative on the 3/8 to help you see that they go down 3/8 of a mile. And then they stop and explore. They'll go down another 3/8 of a mile. They'll stop and explore. All right, so it says, after how many explorations will the submarine's elevation have changed by negative 1 1/2 miles? So this is the total amount of miles it's changed by. After how many explorations, whatever we find. And this is this is just a little bitty piece that it's changing by. And I'm going to put total amount of miles. And this is the small amount of miles that it's changing by after each stop, okay? So I got the total amount of miles it's changed by, and I also have the small amount of miles that it's changing by. So again, I'm giving the total and the small amount, so I'm giving both. So you're going to divide the total by the little smaller amount or the part, okay? So what's the total amount of miles that it changed by? Negative 1 1/2 divided by the smaller amount of miles that it changed by. Well, it changed by this each time, but this is over after all the explorations. It will have changed by that amount, that total. Okay. So now I'm just going to change this to an improper fraction. It's negative 3/2 divided by negative 3/8. And I'm going to keep, change, and flip. So that's negative 3/2 times negative 8/3. A negative divided by times a negative is a positive. It's going to give me positive 24/6. So after how many explorations? So I'm going to say after 4 explorations, it would have changed by negative 1 1/2 miles. Okay. Lily records the change in her dog's weight over 4 weeks. What's her dog's average weekly weight change? Well, I got multiple numbers again. And it's asking me for average. For average, I usually divide. But again, when you have multiple numbers, you got to find the sum of all the numbers and divide by the total amount of numbers. Okay? That little bar means divide. Take the sum and divide it by the total amount of numbers. Okay, so week 1, the dog lost 3/16 of a pound. It's in terms of pound. Now, I use the word loss, but the negative indicates a loss. So when I write it in terms of a number, I'm going to put the negative. I'm not going to put the word loss. Plus, it gained 1/16. Plus, it lost 5/16. Plus, it lost another 1/16. Oh, and the great thing is all these already have a common denominator. I love it. Okay, so now I'm going to put these two together because they both go to the left. So that's negative 8/16. And 1/16 and negative 1/16 cancel each other out. They're opposites. So I'm not even going to worry about that, okay? They just cancel each other out. They're additive inverses. They make 0 when you put them together. So I know the sum is negative 8/16. I'm going to divide it by how many numbers I have. 4 numbers. Divided by 4. 1, 2, 3, 4 numbers. That's what I add together. But put 4 over 1. Now I can keep, change, and flip. So I'm going to keep the negative 8/16. I'm going to change this 2 times and flip that. So, and a negative 8 times a positive 1/4 leaves me with a negative 8 over 64. I can divide both of these by 8 to put them in simplest form. So I know the average weight loss is 1/8 of a pound. But if I use a word, I could say Lily's dog loses 1/8 of a pound every week. But if I don't use the word loses, I got to use the negative sign. Okay? Has to be something, some type of sign on the number, or you got to use a word to indicate an increase or a decrease, okay? A gain or a loss. And this is per week or on average, okay? On average, we're losing about 1/8 of a pound per week. All right, and that's it, guys. Thank you.